So there is an entrepreneur on IFundWomen. Her name is, I have chills up and down my body. I'm not going to cry, but I do have chills. Her name is Dr. Sandra K. Johnson. She is the first Black woman to get her PhD in electrical engineering here in the United States. And she worked at IBM for 25 years as a programmer on Deep Blue. The book and the movie, Hidden Figures, was based on, she was one of the hidden figures. She was literally one of the women doing the mathematical computation. She's about 70 now. Within that cohort, we got an application from Dr. Johnson, and I couldn't believe it. I definitely cried. Ugly cry. I was like, holy mother of God. She built a remittances app on the blockchain to serve sub-Saharan Africa, to make money movement easier, okay? Why the F is this woman not having every VC throwing money at her? Like, why? But I was upset that she had to apply for our cohort. She was only looking to raise $15,000 to finish the programming of her app. That's it.
Hey everyone, my name is Rodell Razor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of X Factor Capital, and I'm going to be showing you guys the inside of our new podcast, the Underestimated Podcast. We're going to be interviewing founders from all over the country. We're going to be telling their stories about the obstacles they've had to overcome, the things they've had to do to build their businesses, whether it be through fundraising, acquiring customers, technology, all these different challenges that you have as a founder, and how as an entrepreneur you have to overcome those challenges, and how as an underestimated entrepreneur they have unique challenges to them, how they go through that process. We're going to tell their stories. We're going to highlight some of their businesses. Hopefully you guys can see some of their great products, some of their great services, and for those of you that are interested in entrepreneurship, this podcast is for you, because it's going to inspire you to go beyond that threshold of where you want to quit, to go through that wall, and these stories are absolutely incredible. So you guys stay tuned. Come along. Hello and welcome. My name is Rodell Razor, and I am here hosting the Underestimated Podcast. We're very excited today, the show that we have, but thank you all to our viewers, our sponsors. This show is designed for entrepreneurs who are building amazing companies all over the country. Some of the top entrepreneurs in the country are on this podcast, and today is no different. We're very excited about who we have today.
Yes, and I'm Jeremiah Captain, co-founder of X Factor Capital, and I get the pleasure and joy of introducing our guest, Karen Cahn from IFundWomen. I remember when we first connected in a social audio room, we were connecting, just talking about so many different topics, and really when we just connected, we just saw the world, I believe, in the same way. So it's all about connecting with like-minded people, like-valued people, but like-grounded people. So Karen, so appreciate you coming on the show. How are you doing today?
I am great. I'm so happy to be here with the two of you because, like JC said, JC, I call you JC now. Just, is that okay?
It's great. I love it. All love. Okay, cool.
It's all love. I mean, if Razor has a cool nickname, even though that's his kind of name, his name, for real, like, you know, yeah. I shorten everything. I make everything into acronyms. So if it bugs you, just gotta let me know. But anyway, I'm so happy to be here. Yes, we did meet on an audio social community. I love how you put that. Yeah. And yeah, it's so interesting because I was actually pulled into a room in one of these apps the other night.
I think I saw you post about that.
I've been off it for a while.
Yeah, I saw you post. I think I just saw you recently post about that in your story. It was a room. Go ahead, but share on that.
Yeah, it was all about. First of all, it was called the Puzzle Club, and I'm obsessed with puzzles. So I was like, what's this all about? And then it was a conversation about, will the metaverse increase or decrease intimacy? And I thought that the conversation was so fascinating that I joined it. And of course I was up until like 2 a.m, which is why I have this raspy voice. I paid for it. I'm like old, you guys, seriously. I can't like stay up until 2 a.m. on these apps, like chatting it up, because like, it's like a hangover for 2 days. But, you know, intimacy and also connection, right? Will the metaverse, which is just another name for the fucking internet with, oh, shoot.
It's all good. It's okay. It's good. It's adult. It's adult. Drop it. Bring it all. We want the full KC. Okay. Yeah, if I'm JC, you're KC.
Full KC.
We're going on tour.
Anyway, it's, you know, the metaverse, we don't need to talk about this much longer. However, I think it's fascinating that it's really just a rebranding of the internet with AR and VR just more at the forefront. And
That's a good
so
way to put it.
anyway, so the idea of connecting and intimacy, is it going to be better or worse? And I don't think it's going to change too much. And it all comes down to what's great about the internet or the metaverse or whatever you want to call it is that JC, you and I would have never connected if it wasn't
Right.
for this one app. We would have never met.
Exactly.
And now here we are. And there's many people in my life, and I'm sure you guys can say the same, that quality people that share your, values, people that share your vibe, people that share your interests, that you would literally have never met if it wasn't for technology. So I'm like a +1 on the technology. I think it all comes down to the humans who are A, building it, and B, using it to be able to control themselves and do things for good. So
That's great.
that was really like a non sequitur and a non question, but there
No,
you go.
And Jeremiah and I, we are big advocates of technology, not just what we do as our careers, but it makes the world smaller, which is part of what we need. It can remove parts of intimacy. We're all attached to our phones. You're walking around the airport, nobody looks each other in the eye, all that good stuff. But most of what it does, at least the way we try to use it in our lives, is to bring us closer to friends and family. And like I Zoomed my grandma during COVID, right? Like I never would have thought, like, when it was her birthday and there was no way for us to get to where she was, and she was crying, and it was like, yeah, like, how is this a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
And so
it's how you use it. It's not
Exactly.
It's not what it is, how you use it, and you look at the space of, like you said, it's the next best thing if you can't be there in front of someone. Like, I would love to be in the room with you right now, but you're in the beautiful state. I don't know, where are you at right now? You're in New York, New Jersey.
Yeah, we're in the world.
I'm in the beautiful state of New Jersey at the moment.
New Jersey.
Yes,
Jersey.
the Garden State.
Yeah, and I would love to be there with you right now. It would be way better if we could be shooting this live right now. But
or her down here.
or you down
Yeah,
here.
it's sunny. It's 78 degrees here.
It is a little bit nicer. But then we could blast over and do New York, Christmas in New York. So,
yes.
Listen, it's all good, you guys. And the fact that we're all here talking about underestimated founders, I find to be amazing, because the ones that are underestimated are the ones that outperform the market. We know that. There's so much data surrounding it. So I find it funny. And I did a little like IG live moment before this, because everyone wants to know how to do a fucking curly beach wave. I'm like, really, people? It's not that fucking hard.
It was amazing. I was waiting to compliment you on that. But
Thanks, guys. You're not allowed to talk about white hair. Just kidding.
Why not?
Oh, that's good, Karen. That's good.
JK, you can talk about whatever you want. But I didn't even know what I was talking about.
You was talking about underestimated.
You went live.
And you went live.
Founders, yes. And the ones that are overestimated are the ones that fail. So I would much rather be an underestimated founder with funding. Obviously, that's the problem that we in community that are trying to solve, which is also why I love knowing you guys, because we are literally trying to solve the same problem. So
go into that.
Go and share what is it that IFundWomen do, and who do you serve, and why did you get into it?
Yeah. So IFundWomen is the go-to funding marketplace for women-owned businesses and all the people who want to fund and support us. So it's essentially a two-sided fintech marketplace. On one side, you've got all the women-owned businesses in this country and in the world. So in the US, you've got 13 million. In the world, you've got about 163 million female founders in markets that we serve. And on the other side of the marketplace, you've got all the people who want to fund and support them, from individuals to brands, enterprises, venture capital firms, family offices, banks, etc. And we make the magic happen in the middle in the marketplace. And we've got multiple products, from an ed tech to a crowdfunding platform to an enterprise brokered grants product to IFundWomen of Color, which is a platform that supports women of color founders on their funding journey, because we know, because our audience, our members are 75% self-identified women of color, with Black women being the majority of that group, with the Hispanic and Latina founders growing very quickly, South Asian, East Asian founders growing very quickly, and Indigenous founders. So all the sort of underrepresented groups have finally sort of started to find out about us in year 4 and 5. So those groups have grown. We went to market in key cities and states where there are large pockets of entrepreneurs, where a large majority are Black women. So, we're so honored to have this audience and these members because they are friggin' rock stars. They're running multi-million-dollar businesses, bootstrapped, and so when you have a majority minority audience, there's two things that you have to do as a founder, and especially as a white founder named Karen. Hello. Number one, you have to build a team from the minute you start the company that looks like your audience. So we are a majority minority company in IFundWomen across engineering, product, marketing, coaching, etc. And then that way it allows you to build products and services that address the needs of your customers. And so I really think that's why IFundWomen has been successful so far, truthfully. We really are the real deal. We actually drive funding. We don't talk about it. I think you guys know there's so much like ink spilled on the page and so much talk about funding underrepresented founders. But there's not a lot of check writing happening. And we are fundamentally changing that. And I'm very proud to say that we just recently released our 5-year impact report. And in 5 years, we have empowered the women entrepreneurs on our platform to raise $135 million in early stage capital that they would have never had access to otherwise if we didn't hang up a shingle,
Wow.
and buy the URL ifundwomen.com for $2.99 on GoDaddy 5 years ago. That didn't happen. The 135 million wouldn't happen. And I think even as important, those businesses have gone on to create 30,000 new jobs in this economy. So we're really making an impact. And it's just like, I feel honored to do this work every day. It's really like the biggest blessing. So.
Wow. So first of all, I think just taking a second and just acknowledging what you guys have done. Absolutely. I love the advice that you said from the beginning was, if you're going to serve a certain market, the first thing you got to do is build a team that looks like that audience. I think a lot of people, especially of European descent, they go try to solve a problem in a category because they see a need.
Why can't we just say white people?
Well, we can. Rydell's biracial. His mom's Italian. So.
No, but what we've seen is a lot
of European descent,
Absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely. So what we see is
we're really going to get technical. Eastern European
descent. Absolutely.
There we go.
Yep, you are absolutely right.
Elon, who's from South Africa, but from Eastern European blood. So it's all intermingled.
Wait, is he really from?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. Anyway, so what we see is a lot of white people that try to solve problems in Black and brown communities, and they don't actually have any lived experience in those communities or have no context for what's actually creating those problems. And so I love that that was the first piece of advice you gave. 135 million, 30,000 jobs. Absolutely incredible. So talk to the audience a little bit about what is crowdfunding and, the platform, that's kind of, I don't remember if that was your MVP or if it was the education product, but talk to us a little bit about what is crowdfunding.
Yeah, you have a great memory. It was our MVP. So crowdfunding is when you, the entrepreneur, go out and raise small increments of money from lots of people that you know in your personal, professional, and social network to add up to just enough money to get your business off the ground or to fund your pivot or fund a new product development. And so it's interesting because this is my second startup. My first startup was a spectacular failure. And I'm not going to go into the whole details of why we failed because it'll suck up like 800 hours of this podcast and it's not that interesting. P.S. I grew up at Google. You don't learn how to be an entrepreneur at Google. And we did everything ass backwards. We did not fail fast and fail cheap. We failed long and expensive, blah, blah, blah. As a Hail Mary to save the company, we did a crowdfunding campaign so we could make payroll. And it was in that moment, I was like, wait a minute. Why isn't everybody thinking about crowdfunding as the very first stop on their funding journey to prove demand for your product or service before you invest in supply? And by supply, I mean wasting years of your life chasing an equity round, which we did in our first startup. Couldn't raise venture capital. I mean, the numbers for women were even more egregious back then. It was 2014. We're here in 2021, entering 2022. 2021, we're going to end up with 2.2% of VC dollars for female-founded companies, 6.4% for female founders of color, which is gross. But in any case, we realized that crowdfunding is just such an, I don't want to call it easy. It's a low risk, all cash, immediate source of working capital that you can use to build your product or service. And you don't have to be a consumer product to crowdfund. I think the biggest myth about crowdfunding, especially back in 2014 or 2016 rather, when we did it, because we did it 2 years in as a Hail Mary to save the company. The biggest myth about crowdfunding really then was that you had to be like the Pebble Watch or the Speaker Cooler or the Veronica Mars movie or some gaming thing. Because the reality was it was Kickstarter, Indiegogo were the two sort of businessy crowdfunding platforms. GoFundMe is amazing. They're for more personal charity. And 94% of the highest grossing crowdfunding campaigns were by white male creators. I did a lot of research on this. White male creators in gaming, consumer tech, and film. There was no space for women. Like there was no space for women of color. There were no space for B2B people. If you were a SaaS B2B solution, you could not crowdfund, or at least you couldn't get into Kickstarter, which was like the cool one. Indiegogo takes anyone, doesn't matter. So that was literally like the light dawned on Marblehead. Literally in that moment, I was like, wait a minute. This thing is just sales and marketing. And not everyone's good at sales and marketing, and that's fine. But we can teach that. It's just the law of averages. The more calls you make, the more sales you're going to make. So we basically shut down the first startup. We had one developer named Shilpa, and I'll never forget it. She was headphones on, coding in the office, and I was like, Shilpa, we're sunsetting Be Proud, and we're doing this other thing. She was like, all right. She just did it. So we built a super scrappy MVP with our Kickstarter money. We delivered our rewards, and we said we were going to do what we were going to do, which was great. And then we had like 15 grand left. We only raised 30,000, which was, by the way, not easy. And I'll get into why it wasn't easy, but we took like 15 or 16,000 and built an MVP of the crowdfunding platform. And that was, 5 years ago, and it worked. And we've really been just trying to get people to see the light around crowdfunding, because I think there's a lot of like icky feelings around it, especially when you look in different pockets of women, in particular, women of color, who are not a monolith, of course. So our Black female founders will tell us that crowdfunding is difficult for them depending on their socioeconomic status. And again, everyone's different. We've got, all different socioeconomic statuses from every ethnicity to every race across the board. So, but what we found with our Black founders was that they said that, building their professional network was the most critical piece that they needed help with, because crowdfunding, when you think about it, is you're going out to your friends, family, and followers and asking them to support your startup. And let's face it, especially in the last few years through COVID, the pandemic, unemployment, all that nonsense, it's not easy to ask people for $20, let alone $100. Right. And most people don't have it. So the key was with IFundWomen of Color, and Olivia Owens, who's the GM of that and the founder of it, she focuses so much of her educational programming on building your professional network. And that has proven to be so successful. So when our founders of color go to crowdfund, they already have the network built up, and we reverse engineered their crowdfunding so that if they know they need to raise 20 grand, they know how they're going to get there, because we've built them a sales list. We've built them a CRM. Well, they've built it, but this is part of the tools and the ed tech that we built to help founders raise more capital. So like our South Asian and our East Asian founders will tell us they have just crowdfunding shame. Like it's just shameful in South Asian cultures, changing for South Asians who've lived in America or grown up in America. But, for recently emigrated South Asians, super shameful to ask for money as a woman. So that's, so the nuances of the different types of entrepreneurs, understanding the pain points is so incredibly critical. And we've done a very good job of that. And we're just getting started. I mean, data is queen around our neighborhood. And so the more data we have,
Most important piece on the chessboard.
Indeed.
Wow, thanks for sharing all that. So you talk about these founders that are literally, like you said, building using technology to bootstrap in a way. So you can kind of say that's how IFundWomen operates, where instead of going around knocking on doors, they're still making phone calls, they're still doing that, but they're using this fintech platform to pretty much bootstrap, where typically these individuals, not even just because of recent events of COVID, but historically through redlining and all the other things that we'll spend an hour just unpacking if we broke down the systematic things in there.
We spent 2 hours one night unpacking that, I do believe, JC.
Yes, we did. And that's why we're here today, because we saw the world the same way. And I saw that you were real and you weren't just a figurehead just trying to capitalize off this opportunity. You are a real human being that really cares and making a difference in the community. And we love you for that. So everything rises and falls on leadership. So you're the leader at the helm. We really acknowledge you for what you're doing. But, these women are able to, like we were talking about earlier, how powerful technology can be used when it's done by the right people being a force for good out in the marketplace. So acknowledge you for that. And now with these women, similar to where you guys are at, they typically are, having a pain point themselves with their products or their business, and then they go create a product or a solution for that. So these women really sound like, and I've seen, heard some of their pitches, listening when Rodell hosted, or when you hosted, and he judged on the what was that event you guys did?
The IFundWomen Entrepreneur of the Year.
They really are like the founder for the market, right? The founder market fit. Is there any particular, founders you want to just kind of brag on right now? I know there's so many, because how many total founders do you have on your platform?
So we have 130,000 founders on our platform.
Wow, amazing.
I mean, gosh. I mean, okay, I'll give you a couple. And I'll give you a couple that weren't part of the IFundWomen Entrepreneur of the Year, because everybody's heard of them and can see them on our socials.
Yeah, they've gotten their press.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they've gotten their due, and there are so many more. So I'm going to give you two of my personal faves. One always makes me cry, so just bear with me if I actually end up crying, which I hope I don't. So there is a woman, I'm assuming you gentlemen have seen the movie Hidden Figures, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Great movie.
Of course.
Great movie.
Yep. For your listeners who are tuning in and maybe haven't seen it, watch it. It's like 4 or 5, 6 years old. I forget now. It's about the Black women who were doing the mathematical computations in a back room with no bathroom that put the first man into space, John Glenn, into space. And so, and they're called Hidden Figures because they were truly hidden in this unair conditioned back room, just literally doing math to figure out how to get this man into space. And they had to walk to a bathroom that was like far away, and they had to be dressed in hose and heels and the whole deal. Watch the movie. It's incredible. So there is an entrepreneur on IFundWomen. Her name is, I have chills up and down my body. I'm not going to cry, but I do have chills. Her name is Dr. Sandra K. Johnson. She is the first Black woman to get her PhD in electrical engineering here in the United States. And she worked at IBM for 25 years as a programmer on Deep Blue. The book and the movie, Hidden Figures, was based on, she was one of the hidden figures. She was literally one of the women doing the mathematical computation. She's about 70 now. Okay, so get this. So we launched a cohort with the mayor of Raleigh, North Carolina, for the 2018. I can't even do math anymore. 4 years ago-ish, 3 years ago. And within that cohort, we got an application from Dr. Johnson, and I couldn't believe it. I definitely cried. Ugly cry. I was like, holy mother of God. This rock star. She's been on the cover of Black Enterprise magazine. She put a man into space. She worked at IBM for 25 years. She's a woman of means. Okay. She is a programmer, and she was building, and she is building, it's out already. She built a remittances app on the blockchain to serve sub-Saharan Africa, to make money movement easier. Okay. Why the F is this woman not having every VC throwing money at her? Like, why? And so she sent an application into our brand new scrappy ass crowdfunding platform to be part of the IFundWomen Raleigh cohort. So I tell you this story because, well, for many reasons. One is I'm always horrified by, you would think it would get easier hearing stories that I, of course, don't have that lived experience as a white woman. It hasn't gotten easier, and it shouldn't get easier. By the way, it should never get easier for white people hearing these stories until shit is fixed, period. So it's never going to get easier, and that's fine. But I was upset that she had to apply for our cohort. She was only looking to raise $15,000 to finish the programming of her app. That's it. So, of course, she got funded in a nanosecond, and it was, and she's incredible. She's given keynotes at Google, and she spoke at Grace Hopper, and blah blah blah. So that's Dr. Johnson. Love her. You guys should. She's amazing, by the way. You guys should totally have her on the pod.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
I'll make an intro. Okay, so then we love Dr. Johnson. She's not like big and depressed. She's a programmer, super nerd. But she if you get her talking, she's fun to talk to. Okay, and then my other sort of, I would say my favorite story is Kalila Wright. I don't know if y'all know her, Mess in a Bottle.
Yes. They just made 200 jackets, right? And they're going to have it at the BT.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
I'm in your story.
Someone started following her on the gram. Thank you.
Yeah, but I definitely heard of them. That she does a great job telling the messages through the bottle of social media and through, fashion and art, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So Kalila Wright, she is an architect by trade, yep. So she went to architecture school and she worked at an architecture firm, all white dudes. Obviously, she was just like, what am I doing with myself? And she started making these t-shirts, and she's out of Baltimore. She started making t-shirts with messages on them. So she's not a t-shirt company. Technically she is, but she is putting messages out there in the world that resonate with, and she says this herself on our podcast. So IFundWomen has a podcast, shameless plug, first episode, go listen. Kalila's on there and she tells you her story way better than I can, but net, she makes t-shirts that have messages on them that resonate with a white guy in Arkansas and, a black guy in Baltimore. So she's just a creative genius, and she screen prints and does everything in her own studio, now factory in Baltimore. And she's just a brilliant genius. So when she first started out, she was working out of a little shop, a little design studio in a really crappy neighborhood in Baltimore. Baltimore, for the most part, has a lot of crappy neighborhoods, and she's from there. And she was like, I'm from the hood. And these are words you can hear from her podcast and her mouth. So I'm not like, trying to be that lady, but she will say it herself. She was like, I was from this neighborhood, so I wasn't afraid to work in this neighborhood. So she signed a lease on a place. Long story medium. She got held up at gunpoint by kids. And I would encourage everyone to go listen to her pod. It's called What a Mess. And she talks about it. The episode's called The Robbery, and she talks about it because these kids were just kids, right? And she has given such grace to kids who have truly traumatized her, on top of trauma, on top of trauma. So they stole all of her machines, all of her computers. She's like, I'm an online business. I don't have cash, literally. And she was held up at gunpoint in a dark back room for hours and hours and hours. She's a mother of a son. And after she escaped, they took all of her shit. So she had nothing left. It was right before the Christmas rush, and she had thousands of orders to fill. And she was, obviously in shock, traumatized. She went to her, her boyfriend's house and, tried to get her shit together. But like, how do you get your shit together after that happens? It's very hard.
Right.
Long story long, I follow Lovia Jai Jones. I don't know if you guys know her, on everywhere. I was watching, she was doing Facebook Live. I was just watching her one day, and she was talking about Kalila and about the robbery and if people could help. And I texted Lovey on the side. I'm like, give me your number, like right now. So I call Kalila, poor Kalila, who was like in shock. And she's like, who the hell is this lady calling me? I'm like, listen, I don't want to mitigate. I don't understand what you went through. I'm not trying to, but you built this business and you have thousands of orders. And like, I want to try to help you if you want it. If you don't, fine. But like, you can do this. And so she was like, let me think about it. This call means everything to me. Like, I didn't think anyone knew. And I was like, oh, everyone knows. Like, Bozeman of St. John knows. Like, everyone knows. Because thank God for Lovey with the huge megaphone. Talk about the internet and connectivity and how powerful it can be, right?
Yeah.
So, long story. I mean, I keep saying long story long. It's just like the longest story ever, but it's a good one. So, Kalila said, okay. She ran a crowdfunding campaign. We helped her, but you know, when you crowdfund, you're doing the work. It's not like I'm sitting here making calls for you. So it's like the credit goes to her completely. Yeah. So she raised 15 grand to find a safe space, buy back her machinery, and fulfill her orders. Wow. And yes, and that was just the beginning. And from there, she kind of got her confidence back a little bit. And like, look, she enrolled in therapy, which a lot of women of color don't do. So like that is a huge thing. She was definitely like a pioneer for sure. And she talks a ton about it. Therapy is so critically important. So she enrolled in therapy and she pitched at the IFundWomen Maryland pitch competition that was sponsored by the Ravens. I mean, all the Ravens were there. I was like dying. I'm a huge NFL fan. I'm a Patriots fan, also a Tom Brady fan, so a Buccaneers fan. So it's like a whole thing. Whatever. We don't need to talk about it. But all the Ravens were there and she won. Right?
Wow.
It was, and like again, Razor, you know our competitions are like, we are very serious about the integrity 100%. Of our competitions. We don't play favorites. It's all math driven, rubric driven, etc. Kalila got up there and killed it and won a $10,000 check. And then from there, just the confidence that you are seen and people want your product. They like your business. It's not about you. It's about what you've built and your brilliance. And from there, she just skyrocketed. She's now in 1,400 Target stores. She's going to do $5 million a year in revenue this year. She has not taken one dime of venture capital. In fact, I was trying to get her to apply for the IFundWomen Entrepreneur of the Year because like we wanted to invest in her company. She's like, I don't know if I want to take on VC investment. I'm like, I can't say I blame you.
Yeah. She's building something incredible on her own.
Yeah. So that is my favorite story. I'll be honest.
That is absolutely incredible. And I'm following her now. I'm going to have to buy a couple t-shirts. So we'll make sure, you know, at the time of when we record this, when we edit it, we put her website up on the, you know, there's a video podcast.
And she's another one you got to have on the podcast.
Yeah, her story is absolutely incredible. So we appreciate you sharing that because, you know, there's so many entrepreneurs of color, specifically Black entrepreneurs, especially Black women entrepreneurs that are building brands and run against these things. And, you know, the challenges that a Black woman entrepreneur deals with are different than a white male entrepreneur or a white woman entrepreneur. Like the nuances of being
even an Asian
woman. Yep. And so, you know, the way
South Asian.
Yep, the way Black people are treated in America, the way women are treated in America, like being, having those check boxes and still overcoming all of those challenges to build a phenomenal brand. Like, I don't blame her for not wanting to take anybody's outside money. Like, I wouldn't want to either. Like, she's doing it on her own.
She doesn't need it right now. She doesn't need it. You know, and there may come a time when she wants to potentially go, you know, all over the world at some point and get into more, maybe. But as of right now, there's no need for that. So she had a perfect space, and she has more, you know, leverage in the conversation now when she does talk to them because of what she's built. It's amazing.
And she just ran her first marathon, the Paris Marathon.
Amazing.
Yeah, you get to be around superheroes every single day.
She's a superhero, but there's so many of the stories, to your point, JC. Like there are, you know, countless stories. I also love the company Black People Will Swim. That's just another new startup that's on IFundWomen, where I think they're addressing such an interesting problem. And, you know, again, something I cannot speak to and didn't know much about before, But what I love about specifically our Black women entrepreneurs, they are educating the world just by virtue of the types of businesses they're starting. So she's starting a swimming lessons business that's a franchise all over the country for Black kids and adults, because historically, Black people weren't allowed to swim in the pool. So they didn't get swimming lessons, period.
There's an amazing book called The Sum of Us. Heather McGee wrote it, and it talked about how racism turned into classism, and it really ended up hurting everyone, even white people, because back in the day when they closed the pool, they were so not willing to allow for integration to happen that they closed the pool. So even white kids couldn't go swim, let alone the Black kids wouldn't learn how to swim as well. And then they took these big, beautiful public pools and they privatized them and turned them into the country clubs, and that was the birth of the country clubs. She really kind of breaks that down and how racism, really from the lens of swimming. So it's beautiful that I'm definitely going to go check out that business, because I grew up not learning how to swim myself, and 70% of the world is water. I might as well learn how to swim just in case something goes down, right? Yep. But then I learned later in my late teens and early adulthood how to swim enough to save myself, but still not great at swimming. So I definitely would love.
And I bet there was probably some shame around the fact that you were taking swimming lessons late.
Yeah, feel insecure in the water, everyone looking at me, and I'm just floundering over there. But at the end of the day, hey, I know how to swim enough. But my daughters, those girls can swim. My youngest actually was really good at water polo. Wish she would have kept going, but she definitely can get in that water and she can be a fish.
Yeah, it is. What's the name of the book again?
The Sum of Us by Heather McGee. Yes, I'm reading it right now.
Okay. I love your book recommendations. Yeah, it is really, this is why I love my job, is because I am at the first innovation point that Black women founders are creating that address these systemic problems that white people just don't know about. And they're real businesses. They're income generating businesses. They are creating jobs. They're putting food on the table and more. And that to me is everything. It's just so exciting.
Was it 2019 or 2020 the fastest growing entrepreneur class was coming from Black women in America? 2020, I think. Still to this day. So they're definitely rising up, and we believe that from X Factor Capital, a big part of closing the wealth gap is going to come through entrepreneurship. You can't give your way or charity your way to closing the wealth gap. It has to be into building businesses that are able to be self-sustaining, and you're really at the, like you said, the beginning stage, which is so critical, that friends and family round, right? Friends, families, and followers and fools sometimes, right? Foolish enough to believe in the vision, and you're really creating that, which we believe is a pivotal part in it's the beginning part of the ecosystem to even get to potentially venture capital.
Absolutely.
You gotta have
What's
this
great
part.
about well, I'm sorry, JC.
No, go ahead.
Finish your sentence. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, come on, bring it. No, it's fine. I was done right there.
Is your editor going to hate me right now?
No, he's earning his check with you. That's all.
Take it from the top, JC.
I don't even know what I was saying. Well, you're building something on this platform, IFundWomen, that is so critical. It's It's the very first step outside of the concept of coming up with the idea. It's the first part of the funding step of the friends, family, followers, and fools, as we call it. And that's so pivotal to even get to have a seat, potentially with the VC or someone beyond to take you to that next step.
Demand.
So really, really showing that you're proving the concept with these women. So we acknowledge you for that.
Thank you. And what's great about this sort of friends and family round is that it's cash. So you're not asking someone to write, a $10,000 angel check, which most people can't do, regardless of race. That's just not something that most Americans can do. So it's really just cash. And it's wonderful to be able to invite your community, whether it's $5 or $500, to support your startup. And I'll tell you, when we did our crowdfunding campaign to fund IFundWomen, I remember my $25 people as much as I remember my $2,500 people. And that is no BS. I do. I remember every single one of them, because to take the time to run your credit card through to support your friend's startup for $25, that's effort. That is love. Money talks. So what's great about cash crowdfunding and with IFundWomen, you don't have to wait until the end of your campaign to get your cash, which is one of our key differentiators from other platforms. Because when you think about it, what happens over the course of a 40-day campaign to a credit card? Like, how many times is it fraud? You lose it, you know, whatever it is. When we had our credit cards run at the end of our Kickstarter, about 20% of our funding we didn't get because of bad credit cards or credit cards that were, turned off or whatever it is. So when on IFundWomen, we run the cards immediately and you get the money immediately in your bank account for working capital. So it's just really such a powerful way to not only, assess whether people, not only necessarily in your friends, your FFFs, but more importantly, your potential customers and people in your business sector. That's what we really try to not profess, but teach on and show the way about is how to build up your professional network. And the one thing that COVID and the pandemic and the social distancing has really propelled is people being forced to build their professional network. And it's easier when there's a screen. It actually is easier. We're not talking about like women in corporate. It's harder for women in corporate through the screen to move up, but that's not our jam. But for entrepreneurs to be able to join in groups, go to webinars, meet people in your business sector through Zoom or GHO or whatever it is, through technology has become fundamentally easier through, audio apps, whatever it is. And so that's why we're seeing such a boom in crowdfunding right now. It's really exciting and it's really fun.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think, like you said, even online shopping, the booms of certain industries, and obviously you do work with a lot of consumer brands and things like that. When people were sitting at their crappy jobs, like the pandemic forced people to go, I'm going to go launch my own damn company. What's the best way to go do that? So I got a couple questions specific to you as an entrepreneur because, you're the founder of IFundWomen, you're the CEO. And so you're an entrepreneur that supports a lot of entrepreneurs. So I have a couple questions about just you specifically. One of the things that I noticed when I was a part of your pitch competition, the Entrepreneur of the Year pitch competition, one of the things I noticed was the community that you guys have built. Oh my goodness. It's absolutely incredible. And I'm sure it's probably one of your proudest assets. And I'm sure you take that very serious. But that doesn't happen on accident. And we've seen a lot of but okay. Those communities don't build themselves and they do not happen on accident. It is very intentional effort by the founding team. So it's you and your team. Talk a little bit about community building and how that's, you guys have sponsorships now. Obviously, you guys have funding. You guys made your first equity investment. Like that is so community driven. What you do is so community driven. What is some of the principles of community building that you've found in building the IFundWomen community?
So I can take zero credit for that. And that is the honest truth. That's not me being humble. That's the truth. Like I'm the ideas lady and the execution lady and the visionary and the leader. The person who started our community is Olivia Owens. And that's just the God's honest truth. So Olivia, employee number one, founding team member. Also, when we talk about equity and cap table and building wealth, equal amount of equity to the other two co-founders. So important. And, Olivia, we hired her. So sad. We hired her. She came from Under Armour. She had worked at Under Armour for like 3 years in Baltimore, wanted to move to New York. Her mother, Deborah Owens, who is a financial whiz, worked at Fidelity for 25 years and then started her own fintech app. She was one of our beta customers. So we did our beta and Deborah and I became friends. She had a radio show on NPR, RIP NPR radio, or the show on Money. Anyway, so we became friends. She's like, my daughter, Olivia, wants to move to New York. Are you guys hiring? I'm like, we actually have enough money to hire a social media manager. We did not have an Instagram.
Yeah. Wow.
Period.
Yeah.
We had a Facebook. We had the Facebook.
The book.
we had an early meta moment. And so Olivia, I will never forget it. Her first day on the job, we had a little offsite with the four of us at my house in walks Olivia, and Olivia's superpower is listening and strategy. And she's listening and listening, and we're talking about what we're doing and crowdfunding and da da da. And I was like, Olivia, so like, what do you think? Like, talk to me. She's like, well, where are you building community? And I was like, what do you mean? Because I'm a salesperson. I know customers and revenue, right?
Yep.
And I know how to build products that customers want to buy and what price to sell them at the product at. That's like what I know.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you have to talk to the community. We've got to create content, and we've got to know who our community is, even though it's small right now. It's probably like a couple hundred people. We have to start building up the community. And I was like, okay, how do we do that? She's like, well, can I start an Instagram account for us? I'm like, sure. So, I mean, really, that's how it started. And so Olivia started off the whole notion. And really, Sarah, Kate, and I we were clueless. Sarah hates social media, and so does Kate. And I liked it, but I was more of like a YouTuber and sort of a Facebook person back then, but really just kind of like into YouTube. So, yeah, community is the number one thing for us. And everything we do is in service of this community, right? And it is and I hate the fact that fucking Facebook changed their name to Meta, because I use the word all the time. Like IFundWomen is so meta, and not in a fucking Facebook way. Oh, I hate that. All right. But IFundWomen is meta because we are women entrepreneurs who could not get funding, which is why we started this company, so we could get other people funding. So the whole, right? And so we raised a seed round, IFundWomen Incorporated. We raised a seed round over 3 years ago. It's the only round we've needed to raise so far, which that is great. The employees still own the company. We raised a common stock round, no preferred, no voting rights, none of that BS. And it was oversubscribed, so that was awesome. And so I don't know what my point is. I'm totally rambling. Oh, community. So Olivia started the community. Then we brought on more marketers. And I would say Shaquila Todd deserves a huge shout out. She's our social and content manager. She knows our community better than anyone. She's the one in the DMs answering questions. She's the one on the Slack answering questions. We have a Slack community of, I think there's like 17,000 women on this Slack network. I can't even believe it. I look at it and I get a little like anxiety from it, because there's a lot going on. But for people that like Slack and they're in there chatting away, it's the quickest way to get to our team, right? People have questions about like, what's the best reward to do for $25 when I don't want to ship something? Either there'll be peer-to-peer coaching. Someone that's already crowdfunded will chime in and be like, oh, I did a digital download of my grandmother's chili recipe and I sold 100 of them. Like, by the way, that's a hot tip. That's a good one. And then the coaches are in there, and Shaquila is, she's a marketer, but we all coach as well. So the community is not just on the gram, it's on our Slack. It is IRL. So before the pandemic, we did a lot of events IRL, and they weren't like fancy events because we really weren't spending the money on that. We belonged to a WeWork. So we were like, come to the WeWork in New York or in LA or in Austin or wherever we were, and we would have hundreds of people show up.
Wow.
And I think it's just because, like, honestly, we deliver funding. We deliver education and funding. Education on how to get funding, and then the funding. I mean, and I really can't take credit for the community building. It's the people on the marketing team. It's the people on the IFundWomen of Color team, and the rest of the crew. But yes, it's everything to us. We have an NPS score of over 80. And for fintech and financial services, that's like off the charts. And I really genuinely believe it's because of community. So what a great question. And thank you for asking.
Of course. Of course. So I ask every entrepreneur this question, and it's two-part. Okay. What is one of your, as an entrepreneur, what is one of your biggest victories? And then what is one of your biggest lessons? We call them losses, lumps and then there's lessons, right? You take the loss, you show the lump, and then you have the lesson on the other side. So what is one of your biggest victories that you can remember, and then one of your biggest losses that you feel comfortable sharing?
I love it. Losses, lumps, and what is it?
Lessons.
So good. Love and alliteration.
I should trademark that. Everyone I've shared it with loves it, so I'm going to trademark it now. Or just give me credit when you share
I'll
it.
give you a footnote everywhere I use it. Okay.
We could put that on the shirts with message in the bottle.
Oh, yes. You're going to get in such the weeds with Kalila. You're going to get in the weeds because I wanted to put so many things on the t-shirt and she was like, that's not cool. I'm like, okay, cool.
Well, Rodell's really big into
So let me answer your question. Okay, so my biggest, like the thing I'm most proud of. Okay, the thing I'm most proud of is IFundWomen of Color. I'm going to make it super quick. Olivia created it in 2019, built it with the engineers in 2019, launched it on stage at the Women's March in January of 2020, before the pandemic, before George Floyd was murdered. We had the platform ready to go with $1 million commitment from Unilever Caress for Black women founders. And the reason we launched IFundWomen of Color is because when we looked at the funding volume for the first 3 years at IFundWomen, the 70% at that point, it was about a little over 70% of the women who identified as women of color founders were raising 30% of the capital. Invert that. The 30% of the white ladies were raising 70%. I looked at Olivia. We sit next to each other at work. I was like, dude, not on my fucking watch. No way. Go find an engineer. Go find a product person. Go figure this out. This is not happening anymore. So she did it. She launched it. And in 1 year, we changed the cumulative funding volume over 4 years up to parity with 51% women of color founders, 49% white founders. We are just getting started. And again, women of color aren't a monolith, but the fact that regular ladies, I always joke, and Olivia like hates my fucking jokes. All my team hate my jokes, but that's fine. Like, it's not like Olivia and I were like Adele and Oprah that were like, hey, we're launching a funding platform, like, and everyone's going to come. We're like regular ladies. We are not celebrities, right? So the fact that we could do that in 1 year just proves if you are so passionate about a problem, you can fix it. Like, you can actually be the change. You just have to commit. So that's my biggest, like the thing I'm the most proud of, period, end of story, at IFundWomen is IFundWomen of Color and the results that we've driven there. The biggest lump, gosh, I really want to give you the real deal, but I cannot legally talk about it because I can't do that. Okay, so now I'm going to have to think about this for a second. Okay, let me just say this. Never take your eye off the revenue ball. Founders, okay? And it's especially hard for tech founders because they're building a tech product, and a lot of, deep tech products are going to be pre-revenue for a while, but it's fine. You're all white guys and you're going to get funded anyway. But for those who aren't white guys, like all the people hopefully listening to this, never take your eye off the revenue ball. So I we were crushing it. I hired, and we were in over our ski. The wheels were coming off the bus from an inbound lead perspective on the enterprise side. So we broker grants on behalf of Visa and American Express and Adidas or Adidas, Unilever, P&G, Squarespace, LVMH, the list goes on, Hennessy, blah, blah, blah. And all of these leads are inbound leads. And I'm not saying that to brag because I was in media sales forever. And like, I know how hard it is to bag these deals. But people really wanted to step up and help women entrepreneurs. And that's with coaching grants and with monetary grants. And we just couldn't keep up with demand. I was the salesperson, literally, because I was the only one that spoke media. We're a fintech company. So we decided to hire a chief revenue officer from the media business. And of course, talent is the most important thing at IFundWomen. And I will pay for talent, no problem, because you get what you pay for in life. We hired arguably one of the most sought after people to run revenue, and it didn't work. It didn't work. It was 6 months of not selling anything, and wasted a couple $100,000.
Mm.
And when I hired this person, who's an amazing person, and there's truly no shade to this person, I just think I am the A in the racing matrix. I am the accountable one. So I just think that because this person had been selling media at major platforms, and the sell is very different versus we don't sell media. We don't sell impressions. We don't sell banners. We are selling a mission and a vision, right? Very different. And so I needed to find a salesperson who actually was an entrepreneur or is an entrepreneur that can just tell the story organically and not be salesy. And so that's on me. That's not on this person. I pretty much set this person up to fail, not intentionally, but I thought I was doing the right thing because we were talking to the CMO of Visa. I was talking to the CMO of Visa every other day. And I'm like, I don't have time for this. I really don't. I have to I have to work with the product team and the engineers on building our next product. So that's my biggest lump. And we're still kind of crawling out from that because that was this year. And we had 6 months of not making our numbers. So we had to hustle our asses and make them up in the second half. We're going to come in under budget this year, just to be candid. We're profitable. We're plenty of runway. So I'm not worried about money. But as a salesperson who sets a goal for the company at the beginning of the year and that we are not making it, that to me is like makes me nauseous.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think there's so much. Yeah, no, I think there's so much to be, unraveled in that because most, someone would see your guys' Instagram, they would see the success you're having. And like you said, there's so many lessons along the way. And for so many startups, you guys are still, a startup. If for so many startups, that would have taken them out. A bad hire at that stage, at that caliber, at that price point will wipe most companies out. So you had to get back to entrepreneur mindset, like early stage, like, yo, I'm on every phone call. No one else take these calls. I'm up late. I'm up early, right? So it never really ends. There's different iterations of that. And whether you're talking to, your first cohort of founders and you're trying to gather 3 to 6 people just to jump on the platform from a beta, or you're talking to the CMO of Visa, you still have to sometimes take off the cape and be, oh yeah, I'm not this big CEO. Like I'm in the mud. I'm right here with my team. And so I just love that, so many entrepreneurs, they're looking for the day where they can just wear the cape and be Elon Musk. But you really, you're in the grind every single day. And obviously that's why we respect you so much. But I think it's something that to be said that you never, like the great entrepreneurs, they never put on a cape and sit in the ivory tower. Like they stay in the business. So I appreciate you sharing that. And that's a great lesson that probably woke up you, your team to a new level of like, hey, we never make it, right? Like you never arrive. So I love it.
You just summed that up so beautifully. Mic drop.
Yeah, I love it. So I would love to close out. I want to throw it over to Jeremiah, and I want to close out with a couple more questions. Jeremiah, you have anything you want to throw at Karen? Because I know you guys have a long-standing relationship. Jeremiah told me about the 2-hour conversation you guys had, and I was like, yeah, when I talk to her, it won't nearly be that long. There's no way. I can't do 2-hour phone calls with new people. But we talked for 45 minutes, and it was supposed to be super quick. And I was like, yeah, like we got into it. We were going at it. I loved hearing the passion, and we ended up talking for 45 minutes while you were curling your hair. I had to jump in the shower. It was right before it. I don't know if you remember that. So we were like real quick, like, hey, yeah, just tell me what I got to do. And you're like, okay, I'll tell you what I got to do. And then you're like, actually, I got to tell you the story, right? And I'm like, yeah, well, I got to tell you my story. So you got
to know the backdrop.
You got to know the story. Entrepreneurs got to tell our stories.
Organic way. It's very organic with all of us. I think we need to start like a commune of cool people.
Yeah, we definitely do. There definitely needs to be a huddle.
And it's beautiful to say, like you said, you go back to the whole thing about this stigma around crowdfunding of some people sometimes we make fun or we run away from things we don't understand, right? And when you really break it down the way you've broken down of what you really are doing for these founders, what you're creating, it's something very strategic and very intentional in a community that's had some strategic things done to box them out. You need a strategic plan and very intentional plan to help them stand up so they can stand on their own. So I think that's beautiful. And you've done that through the 4 C's of building the community, bring in the capital, which is so valuable, right? Because one thing we've learned in this ecosystem of a lot of big companies, a lot of sometimes the white savior mentality that comes into these ecosystems, they just want to educate. It's like, we just got to educate you more, educate, but don't want to bring any economics to the education, right? Bringing capital to it. So you're building the community, bringing capital, but you're also bringing connections, right? Teaching these founders how to build professional networks. And the most important thing outside of that also is that coaching, right? Of the navigating through the whole process. So the community, the capital, connections, and coaching is so valuable, and it all started with a commitment. So we brought 5 C's on that last one.
Boom. One bonus.
That you are so creative.
Yeah.
Oh, another one.
that.
Oh,
another
no,
C.
keep going. All right, Captain.
C is definitely his favorite
Oh,
letter.
Captain, my captain.
yes. So I kind of outranked everyone with birth. Sorry, guys.
I love it. Yeah, we hear all the time, especially from our women of color founders, who are like, enough with the mentorship. Like, show me the money, right? And we need the connections, right?
Yes.
And the coaching is very specifically like targeted to specific topics. It's not mentorship. It's not, and mentorship is good.
It's important.
I'm not
You need
saying
it.
people shouldn't have
You need both.
mentors, but like there's too many mentor networks and not enough funding networks, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well,
a nugget.
mentorship in this ecosystem without any money, literally is still a form of manipulation, right? Because you're just kind of dangling this one day, you just keep kicking the can down the road. And we all know, like, money talks, right? Money allows you to, pay your bills, do what you need to do, but to get your business off the ground. So it's very vital that the money comes in. And we're starting to see, more money that's ever, been in this ecosystem starting to come, but it's still not enough. And we have a long way to go.
Oh my God, not even close. We're just starting. Like, we all have started the conversation, right? And yeah, Arlen Hamilton, of course. There's folks that have been having this conversation for the last 5 years, and I mean, we're not even close. But I would say that watch out, world, over the next year or two, because in my IFundWomen Entrepreneur of the Year speech, which I'll send you guys a link to, I talk about there is no pipeline problem. There is a give a shit problem. And that's the problem I feel like I'm solving right now. And in addition to that, there are tens of billions at the minimum of undeployed capital that are earmarked for women and diverse founders, even just at the US government level, at the SBA, that they can't deploy because they can't find founders. I'm like, are you kidding me? So anyway, Karen is calling the manager on this and is going to get the money.
That should definitely be the name of your podcast. Karen is calling the manager. Karen wants to speak to the manager
to bring more money to the minority. Like, bring another M in there, right?
Got it.
But that's
I might
beautiful.
consider a rebrand. I'm considering a rebrand, y'all.
Karen wants to speak to the
Okay,
manager.
I got time for one more question.
All right,
I gotta
cool.
jam.
Yep. So first, any last words you have for an entrepreneur, and then obviously let us know how we can find you, websites, social handles, things like that. Any last words you have for an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. Whether you're men, women, doesn't matter, non-binary, do not go into debt funding the earliest stages of your startup. Do not run up that credit card debt. Crowdfund for cash. Use that money to build your MVP, your prototype, your pilot, your first run of your line, whatever it is, because most startups fail, and that is perfectly fine. You're talking to someone who's had a failed startup and has lived to tell the story, and that's a very privileged thing to say, and I recognize my privilege in being able to say I failed and I was able to move on. Most people do not have that privilege recognized. So what I'm telling you is there is nothing worse than having a failed startup and a mountain of credit card debt to pay back. So don't go into debt funding the earliest days of your startup. That's the best piece of advice I could give you. Come to IFundWomen. We welcome men. We have men on the platform, truly. Come to IFundWomen. There's so many free resources, free workshops with live humans. Learn how to do it before you start swiping the credit card, buying the URL, hiring people, having your website built, doing, buying fabric, all the things that you have to buy and do that costs money to start up. Come learn first. Take a month. If you're super passionate about starting your business, take a month. Come to IFundWomen. Again, men and women welcome. Go and do all the free stuff. There's e-courses, there's workshops almost every day. and really learn the fundamentals. And then, yes, as you're getting ready for your crowdfunding campaign that you're going to be very well prepared for, and you know you're going to make your goal, you can then, yes, obviously you get your URL and you get your socials going and all that good stuff. But don't go into debt funding your startup at the very beginning.
I love it. All right, now where can people find you?
People can find me at IFundWomen on all the socials. You can find me at Karen Cahn, KarenCahn. And yeah, if you DM me to my personal, I will write you back. Like that's
You will write back. I love that.
She will. She wrote back to me.
I will write back. Of course I did.
Of course.
I also gave you a massive shout out for the people that I work with who are, I don't call them the kids, but in my brain I do because they're so young. They're like, it's the fit. I'm like, oh, it's not the looks. It used to be looks. Now it's the fit. Yeah. JC, I gave you a major shout out today on the fit of your Instagram.
Wow. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Do you even know what that means? Are you old too?
I am getting old now. I have an 18-year-old daughter now, and I'm going to make sure that she plugs into IFundWomen as well because she's got an idea that she wants to launch. So,
but do you know what the word fit is referring to?
Your outfit?
my outfit, my looks.
Outfit, exactly.
Yeah.
But like, who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew?
Who knew? Now we all know. Thanks to Casey.
You're welcome, everybody.
I love it. Well, thank you, Karen, for joining us on the show. Thank you, IFundWomen team, for the work you're doing in the world. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you to all of our viewers and listeners. We appreciate you guys tuning in. This episode is absolutely rich. Make sure you share it with somebody. And of course, thank you to our sponsors who make all of this possible. We appreciate you guys. Karen, thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Love y'all. See you soon.
Ciao.